Welcome to another edition of Shoestring Motorcycle Touring. My name's Thomas Moore, and what we're going to talk today about is tuning up carburetors on a motorcycle. It's a pretty easy job, can save you a pile of money. Don't need a lot of mechanical knowledge to complete it, just a few basic tools. Have to make yourself a little homemade manometer, which is really easy. We'll go over that as well. As you see, I've removed the fuel tank and the seat off the motorcycle so I can get at all the parts I need to get at. I'm going to move the camera and show you some of the parts on the carburetors that you're going to be adjusting and disassembling. Alright, now this is a 1978 CB750K, and one of the first things you need to do is remove this dust cover on the top of each carburetor. I would recommend a magnetic screwdriver because these little screws have a tendency of falling down and finding dark places down in your motor, and you never find the screws. So we're going to remove this, being careful. There is a small dust seal on the bottom of this that if you damage it, then it's just going to delay you getting back on your motorcycle and you'll be having to order a part. So we're going to set that aside. We've already removed the three other dust covers, and the next piece that we need to remove is the air sample screw. And each carburetor has one of those approximately in the same location. So we're going to back that out. Now on my 1978 CB750, this is a non-magnetic kind of screw, so it is not anything that you can use a magnetic screwdriver on. But I can put our hand underneath it and let it fall into it. I'm going to set that aside as well. Now we're ready to hook up all of the little brass sample tubes that you can order from any motorcycle shop, or I purchased these off of eBay. I believe the whole set of 4 cost about $7. If you order it from a dealership, they charge about $7 a tube. Okay, now I've already screwed in the sample tube into the other 3 carburetors, and we're finishing up here with carburetor number 1. Now this is carburetor number 1, then 2, then 3, then 4. On a 1978 CB750K, and I don't know what other years, number 2 is a non-adjustable carburetor, so all the other carbs are adjusted to that carburetor. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to hook up all of the vacuum tubes from our manometer to each of the carburetors. Okay, now before I hook up the last vacuum sample tube, I want to point out your adjustment that you're going to be making. You have a lock nut right here and the adjustment screw right in the top. Each one of the carburetors has one of these, except for carburetor number 2, as I mentioned before, is a non-adjustable carburetor. So all of them are set to the benchmark that number 2 has. So we hook up the tube from our manometer and we're ready to fire up. I have already preheated the engine up earlier so that we're not cold starting the engine, and we're ready to fire up and see what our carburetors look like sync wise. Okay, we've got the motorcycle fired up, and we can see that number 1 cylinder is wanting to run with a little bit of extra vacuum, so we're going to turn and back out the screw in the top of the carburetor. As you see, I dropped it too far, and that was only about a 1/16 of a turn, so it's a very, very fine adjustment. As you see, here's the level in cylinder 1, 2, 3, and 4. So we're going to bring this on up, bring this on up. Now it's more important that we just don't have any change more so than the level in every tube being exactly the same. So here we are. Number 1, number 2, number 3, and number 4. We're going to sit here and watch, see if anything changes, any of the levels change. But as you can see, number 1 cylinder is still wanting to drop a little bit. So we're going to bring it on back up. Everybody's staying pretty well put. what it is this relative vacuum against each other. So as long as anyone's not changing too drastically, we may see if we can bring number 3 and number 4 up just a little bit. I don't know. Now that we've let it sit and stabilize, this is pretty well the level across the board. I think we're going to stay with that. Leave that alone. Probably not going to get much better than that. So it's pretty simple. All you do is adjust each carburetor. This is my benchmark carburetor number 2, and I adjust everything else so all the levels are staying even. Okay, now we've through syncing all the carburetors, and now we just need to go back and tighten up each of the lock nuts on the adjustment screws. And it's very important to not turn your adjustment screw while you're tightening up the lock nut. So got a small wrench. Doesn't take a lot of torque either. This isn't putting on lug nuts or anything like that. So it's just little small brass pieces. So we don't want to put a lot of torque on anything. Just enough to keep it from turning. Once we go through and tighten up the other 3 carburetors and remove our vacuum tube samplers, we're ready to go. I appreciate your time. Thank you for watching another edition of Shoestring Motorcycle Touring, and check us out on Facebook. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.